Today we're going to be talking about upgrading your current system and how you're probably only one upgrade away from having something that's very relevant and can play a lot of games smoothly at decent frame rates. So yeah, what we're going to be talking about today, especially the system behind me here, is how I've upgraded a whole bunch of different office computers that were pretty much obsolete. They came with like i3 or old i5 processors, 4 gigabytes of RAM, and how we were able to turn that into something that's very capable. For example, this system here, without listing the specs, can play Apex Legends 1080p, probably 100 to 144 FPS on pro settings, high settings 60 FPS. I can easily play Modern Warfare or Modern Call of Duty Warzone. So it's a very capable system, and basically what we've done here, I'll just go over my steps of how I upgraded this, and maybe you can kind of get an idea of what you can do for your next steps to upgrade the system. So the first thing, when I got this system, it came with this original processor here. You probably can't see it. It is the i5 2500. You might be able to faintly see it there. It's a 4-core, 4-thread processor. It's pretty decent. I was able to play a couple games, not super great. Of course, when I got it, it just came with i5 2400, 2500, 4 gig of RAM, and everything else was stock, and it came with a power supply. So yeah, the first thing I upgraded was the CPU to the Intel Xeon E3 1240, basically the i7 2600. The main difference there is we were going from a 4-core, 4-thread processor to a 4-core, 8-thread processor. That makes a huge difference in gaming. So that's like a no-brainer upgrade. I think I paid $50 for that processor. The next thing that I immediately upgraded was the memory to 12 gigabytes. So we went from 4 to 12. So initially it came with two 2 gigabyte sticks, and I added two 4 gig modules there. This makes a huge difference as well, especially if you want to do anything like gaming. Even budget video editing, it'll cut very well. Most applications nowadays, especially games, are going to use around that 8 gigabyte mark. And yeah, 8 gigabytes of RAM won't cut it anymore. You will be very limited in terms of what games you can play. So, processor, CPU covered. The next two things that we upgraded here was adding a budget-friendly power supply with a budget-friendly graphics card. In particular, the model here, you can see we used the Gigabyte 400 watt PSU. We had about 360 watts on the 12 volt rail there. It came with a nice 8-pin connector. It was an 80 plus power supply. I bought it just because I trusted the brand, and I've used a lot of them now, and they've worked great. And then my budget-friendly, my most favorite graphics card here, if that makes sense, is the RX 570 4 gigabyte. I think this is one of the best value for money cards out there. Yes, it's not the cheapest, but it really does deliver, and especially on those higher visual settings. Because, yeah, for example, the E3 1240 or the i7 2600, you can't push out 200 FPS necessarily in all games, but if you play on high settings, you'll stay around that 60 FPS mark. You'll get 100% GPU usage, and it'll be a really smooth experience with your 4-core, 8-threaded processor. So those were the two next things I upgraded then. The last thing that I upgraded that I think makes the biggest difference is buying one of these really nice budget SSDs here. For example, this is a 240 gigabyte solid state drive. Where's the package? Yeah, I bought, these came in yesterday, so I just started loading the OS last night, but you can see here it's a budget Sunbow 240 gig SSD. I've used these for a long time, and my personal test drive is a 480 gig Sunbow SSD, and they've worked out really well for me. But basically what my point here is that, for example, if we had this whole system set up, but this was an i5 2500, our gaming experience would be terrible. If we had this whole setup, but we only had 8 gigabytes of RAM, we wouldn't be able to play a lot of games. If we had this whole setup, but we did not have a solid state drive, it could take a minute or two for you to load into your OS. It'd be a lot sloppier experience. So basically my point here is that maybe you're starting from step one where I was at, or maybe you already have a couple parts. But most likely your system, like, you don't need to go out and buy a whole brand new system. Most likely you're only about one upgrade away from making it a very relevant gaming experience. For some of you, it might be adding even just a graphics card. If you can't afford the power supply, you can always look at one of these nice options here. This is a GTX 1050. It's a low profile card, so it even fits in those small form factors cases, but you can see it's a GTX 1050. This does not require external PCIe power and makes for a really nice upgrade option. So it's just consider all your options there before looking at buying a whole new system. You can always think about, hey, can I upgrade my processor to maybe 4 cores and 8 threads? hashtag i7-2600 with the Xeon equivalent. Or maybe, oh, maybe I have a decent system, but I'm getting stutter and lag. Oh, do I only have 8 gigabytes of RAM? Maybe I'll upgrade that. Wait, my system feels sloppy. How about I get myself a nice budget SSD? I recommend do not get the 128 gig SSDs. Get the 240. The 120 gig SSD will fill up in no time. Games these days are really, really big. I know Call of Duty Warzone takes 180 gigabytes of space, so it's definitely something to consider that. Like, okay, you definitely want a solid state drive for your boot device where you put Windows on it. It makes a huge difference. But then it's like, okay, now you also need to look at the getting large hard drives and stuff. But yeah, hopefully you got something away from this video. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out in the comment section below. But just remember, do some research. Even if you have like a 4th Gen i3, you can still upgrade that to like a 4th Gen i5 or 4th Gen i7, and now you're going from something that's pretty irrelevant, something that's really laggy, to something that can play a lot of games. Because yeah, I've seen a lot of people with 4th Gen i3s, and they're like, okay, I need to just buy a new system because this is slow. But what they don't realize is, okay, instead of spending $600 on a new system, they can spend $150 on the old one and get something that performs really well. Because anything after Sandy Bridge, once upgraded, it can perform well. We're not dealing with Core 2 quads. But anyways, I'm going to wrap this up here. I'm always available in the comment section below. Come drop your comments. Come chat with me. I'd be happy to answer anything there. But just remember, your system is probably only about one upgrade away from being relevant.